A 95-pound Doberman named Rocco spent 237 days in a shelter while 31 different families walked past his kennel and chose someone smaller, softer, safer. Then one woman finally signed the papers. Within a week, he had taken over her baby's nursery. Within a month, he had taken over her entire life. And what he did at 2:51 one morning is the only reason both of them are still here to tell it. Hannah Mercer was 34 years old, newly a mother, and completely on her own. Her husband had left 8 months into the pregnancy, somewhere around the week the crib was delivered, and by the time her daughter Ran arrived, 6 pounds and 9 ounces on a humid morning in Sarasota, Florida, the house had gone very quiet. Hannah told everyone she was fine. She was not fine. She was 34, running on no sleep, rattling around a 3-bedroom house with a newborn, and a silence that pressed on her chest every night at 3 a.m. She wasn't looking for a dog, but a coworker forwarded her a photo from the county shelter off Fruitville Road, a black and rust Doberman with one ear that didn't quite stand all the way up, under a caption that said he was running out of time. His name was Rocco. He was 95 pounds, 6 years old, and he had been at that shelter longer than any other dog in the building. 237 days. Surrendered when his elderly owner passed away, then walked past by 31 families who took one look at the breed, the size, the cropped silhouette, and kept moving. Hannah drove the 40 minutes to the shelter, telling herself she was only looking. Marcy, the shelter worker, warned her gently. "He's wonderful," she said, "but he is a lot of dog for a woman alone with a baby." Hannah crouched down at the kennel anyway. Rocco didn't bark, he didn't jump. He walked to the gate, sat down, and very slowly leaned all 95 pounds of himself against the bars, right where her hand was resting, like he had been saving that lean for exactly the right person. She signed the papers 20 minutes later. Rocco took over the nursery within the first week, and he did not ask permission to do it. On day 1, Hannah set up a brand new dog bed in the living room. By the second night, it sat empty, and Rocco was lying on the floor directly beneath Ren's crib, all 95 pounds of him folded into an 11 by 11 room, like he had been assigned to the post. Hannah moved the dog bed into the nursery to make peace. Rocco ignored it and kept the bare floor. She tried closing the door. He lay against it out in the hallway and sighed all night, a sound like a slowly deflating tire, until she gave up and left it open for good. I can see you're still watching but haven't subscribed yet. That stings a little. Hit subscribe. You'll want to be here at 2:51. And then, exactly the way the title promises, Rocco took over everything else too. He took over the 6:40 a.m. wake-up, nudging Hannah's hand with his nose 4 minutes before Ren ever stirred, like he had the baby's schedule memorized better than the baby did. He took over the nightly bottle, lying beside the glider with his chin on Hannah's foot for all 20-odd minutes of it. And he took over the rocking chair, which became a genuine problem, because a 95-pound Doberman does not fit in a nursery glider built for a 130-pound woman, and that fact did not stop Rocco from trying to climb into it every single evening, until the chair groaned in protest and Hannah laughed out loud for the first time in months. He took over the front window too. By the 3rd week, he had claimed the cushion that looked out over the driveway, and he ran a route through the house every couple of hours like clockwork. Front window, back door, nursery, repeat. A patrol nobody had taught him and nobody had asked for. He took over the mail, escorting the carrier from the gate to the porch and back with the gravity of a Secret Service detail. He even took over bath time, planting 95 pounds of himself against the side of the tub every evening at 6:15, just in case the small person inside needed anything from anyone. For all that bulk, Rocco turned out to be a coward about exactly one thing: the baby's wind-up swing. The first time it started its slow mechanical sway with that tinny little lullaby, 95 pounds of Doberman levitated off the floor and relocated to the far side of the house. For 2 weeks, he refused to be in the same room as it. Hannah still has a 30-second video of him peering around the doorframe at a motorized seat, ears flat, deeply betrayed, that she has watched more times than she will ever admit. That laugh mattered more than Hannah wanted to admit. She hadn't really laughed since the divorce. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours in a row since Ren was born. But somewhere in those first few weeks, with 95 pounds of dog breathing slow and steady on the nursery floor, Hannah started sleeping again. 4 hours, then 5. The silence that used to press on her chest at 3 a.m. had a heartbeat in it now. And slowly, without quite noticing it happen, her whole day reorganized itself around him. She started taking Ren to the park over on Bee Ridge at 9 every morning, because clearly Rocco needed the walk, and it turned out, so did she. She started talking out loud in the empty house because there was finally someone to talk to. She bought a 40-pound bag of food every 2 weeks, and a second bed he never used, and a seatbelt harness for the car. And somewhere in there, she stopped feeling like the last person awake in the world. If you have ever been pulled out of a dark place by an animal who simply decided you were worth staying for, you already understand exactly what this story is about. Hannah used to think she had rescued Rocco. Looking back, she honestly isn't sure who rescued whom, and she was nowhere near ready for the night that question got answered for good. The neighbors had their thoughts, of course. Hal, the retired man next door, told Hannah point blank that a dog that size around a 6-month-old made him nervous. Hannah didn't argue. She just kept walking Rocco past Hal's porch every evening at 7, the big dog matching his stride to the stroller wheels, never once pulling, never once a problem. Within a month, Hal had started keeping a dog biscuit in his shirt pocket. Within 2, he had a name for Rocco that wasn't that dog. There was one evening that should have told her exactly what kind of dog she had. A man came to the door at dusk, a stranger with a clipboard and a story about a utility inspection that didn't quite add up. Rocco didn't growl. He simply appeared at Hannah's hip, all 95 silent pounds of him, and stood there. The man rechecked his clipboard, suddenly remembered another appointment, and left in a hurry. Hannah learned 2 days later that 4 houses on the next street over had been hit by a fake inspector scam that same week. Rocco never made a sound. He hadn't needed to. For 5 good months, life with Rocco settled into something Hannah had stopped believing she would ever have again. A routine, a warmth, a house that no longer echoed. She let herself think the hardest part was finally behind her. It wasn't. The hardest part came at 2:51 on a Tuesday in March at 2:51 a.m. Hannah had gotten up to warm a bottle. Ren was fussing softly in the nursery, Rocco at his usual post on the floor, and Hannah was standing at the kitchen counter when the room tilted hard to one side. She doesn't remember falling. The doctors would explain it later. A blood clot had traveled to her lung, a postpartum complication that strikes fast and silent and takes more new mothers than almost anyone realizes. 1 second, she was holding a bottle. The next, she was down on the kitchen floor, unable to stand, unable to call out, her vision narrowing into a long gray tunnel. She tried to call for help and nothing came out. She tried to crawl toward the counter, toward her phone, and her arms would not answer her. The last clear thought she had was of Ren, alone in the crib down the hall, and of how quiet the house was about to become all over again. What she does remember is Rocco. He was at her side in an instant, 95 pounds of pure panic and purpose. He licked her face, he nosed hard at her shoulder, and when she still didn't get up, he did the only thing left that he could think to do. He bolted to the front door and he began to bark. Not his ordinary bark, a sound Hannah had never once heard from him in 5 months. Deep and frantic and endless, his whole body slamming against the door again and again and again. Hal heard it through the shared wall at 2:54. He still had the spare key, the one Hannah had handed him weeks earlier for no particular reason at all, and he was inside the house in under 2 minutes. He found Hannah gone gray on the kitchen tile, Ren screaming in the nursery, and a 95-pound Doberman standing guard over his collapsed owner, refusing to move an inch from her side. Hal called 911 at 2:57. The ambulance pulled into Sarasota Memorial at 3:19. The doctor told Hal that night, and told Hannah days later, the very same thing. 11 more minutes on that floor, and she would not have made it. 11 minutes, that was the whole margin, and every single one of those minutes had been bought by a dog that 31 families had walked right past. They called it a near thing, the kind of case they teach to residents. A young mother home alone, a clot that gives almost no warning. The one thing that saved her, the attending said, was the speed of the call. He didn't write down what had made the call possible. But Hannah knew, Hal knew, and every nurse on that floor knew by the second day, because Hal told the story of the barking Doberman to anyone who would stand still enough to long enough to hear it. Hannah spent 6 days in the hospital. Hal kept Ren the entire time, and Hal, the man who had once said a dog that size made him nervous, drove to Hannah's house twice a day, not for the baby, but to feed and walk a Doberman who refused to eat and sat at the front door for 6 straight days waiting for the sound of one specific car. When Hannah finally came home, she didn't make it 3 steps past the entryway. She sank down right there onto the floor, still weak, still bruised from the fall, and 95 pounds of Doberman folded himself into her lap as gently as a dog that size possibly can. The two of them stayed there on the hallway floor for a long, long time. Some stories are too good to keep to yourself, and the sound Rocco made when that car door shut was one of them. Today, Ren is 2.5. Rocco is 8, with a little gray coming in around the muzzle, still folding 95 pounds of himself onto the nursery floor every single night, still failing to fit in the glider, still nudging Hannah's hand 4 minutes before the alarm goes off. He took over the nursery in a week. He took over her whole life in a month. And at 2:51 one morning, he quietly handed that life back to her. Ren's first full sentence at 2 years and 1 month old was 4 words long. Rocco is my brother. Nobody in that house ever corrected her. People see a 95-pound Doberman and they start counting the reasons to be afraid. The breed, the size, the teeth. They never stop to count the other number, the one that actually mattered. 237 days he waited in that kennel for someone to choose him. And the day Hannah finally did, she had no idea she was choosing the one creature on earth who would still be standing between her and the dark at 2:51 in the morning. Because sometimes the ones the whole world counts out are the only ones still counting on you. So tell me the truth, would you have looked past the breed, the size, and the 237 days and taken home the 95-pound Doberman that 31 families rejected? Or would you have walked right by like everyone else? Tell me in the comments.